this episode of In the House, we sit down with Christy Taylor. Christy is a principal architect at Chioco Design and president of the Austin chapter of the American Institute of Architects. Christy tells us about her path into architecture, and she gives us an inside look into the AIA and what they do for the Austin community. We hope you like this episode. If you do, share with a friend and give us a 5-star rating. Thanks for listening. All right, welcome to this episode of In the House. Today we are chatting with Christy Taylor. Christy is the principal architect at Chioco Design and is also the president of the Austin chapter of the American Institute of Architecture. Christy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, we were just chatting, and I kind of want to dive back into it, but you were just telling us about your trip to Greece,
yeah.
Correct? Yeah, so
yeah.
I kind of want to hear the start. I want to hear all about that. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was a dream trip, right? And when I tell people about it, they're like, oh, that must be nice. And I'm like, I know. I kind of hate myself because hearing about it, I get jealous that I'm not back there. No, it was a great time. It was my husband and I and a couple that we're friends with and a couple of other people. For our 40th birthdays, we've been really kind of going out with these big trips. Like we did Costa Rica and sailed the Florida Keys, and now another 40th birthday came up in this friend group, and it was time to sail around Greece. So we were in a 2-hull catamaran for 7 days and just popping around to different islands and saw some really cool temples and the kinds of things that just make you feel really wonderful and insignificant because you're looking at something that's you think things are old here and then you see things that are truly old and have survived, and it's really fascinating. Plus, I've never been anywhere. You learn about these things so much, right? The Parthenon and the Acropolis and the Agora and all of these things, you learn about them when you're in architecture school, and seeing them really alive was really fun.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's definitely a place that's on my bucket list to go. I'm very jealous, but yeah, we were just talking about construction methods over there. Did you get into that at all while you were over there and kind of discover?
Oh my God, we nerded out.
Yeah.
Just we've got to be. The whole group is kind of architecture and design, all of us, and so we're not going to out nerd each other, right. You know what I mean? It was a bunch of like-minded people that were trying to, how did they do this? But yeah, you get to see really simple machines, right? And how they're incorporated. They would take these wedge shapes out of the stone and then put a wedge in and then block it with a solid piece. And so then they could lift the stone from the center, right? Yes, that's the right reaction. Yeah. It's just it's so simple. And I think if you'd have given me 100 years, I may not have come up with it.
So evolution.
Yeah. It's not going our way, I don't think, because that was thousands of years ago. But that kind of stuff, we are just all in it together, nerding out.
Do you feel like it's coming, though? Do you feel like we're due for another evolution? We're due for another discovery of our new capabilities? We're at the tipping point of this new...
Some big breakthrough?
Yes.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be nice? I would love to get left in the dust, immediately, and be sort of obsolete and see things get greatly improved.
I think we're there. I really think we are there.
What does it look like then, Mark?
Equality.
Yeah. We're making strides.
Yeah.
We're swinging back, but we're swinging forward in bigger ways.
This sandbag that we've been carrying forever is going to be released, and we're going to, we're running going 5 miles an hour with this stupid sandbag, and we're going to release it, and it's going to be 100 miles an hour into, I don't know, beauty and compassion and love. I think that the future is, I think we're there. I think within the next 10 years we're gonna move into that, and more than architecture, more than politics, more than I think we're there.
We're headed for a renaissance.
Yeah,
that would be great.
Yeah,
it really would. I feel like we've lived in India, spent time in Brazil, traveling the world, and living in the U.S. we are facing like crumbling infrastructure.
Yeah.
We're burdened by the decisions that have been made hundreds of years ago, and it feels a little like that sandbag that you talk about. So I like the way you think about it.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I'm optimistic. I'm always optimistic. India. So Christian talked about how, oh God, I gotta go weld something. It was hard to be able to find a helmet to be able to go do this, and so they're struggling in educating people on how to be able to do this. What was your thoughts about India and your experience?
Yeah, we lived there, it's been over 10 years ago now, and we worked at a university together, and we were professors, and my husband focused on construction methods, like you mentioned, like, furniture fabrication, welding, woodworking, and I focused on, I taught seminars and theory classes. I was just coming off, a master's where I'd kind of really delved into self-built housing and the way that people choose to house themselves all over the world. And so some people call it informal housing, right? The housing that happens when architects and planners and municipal and federal agencies are not available to them. And so that was what I studied. So I taught seminars on the history of informal housing. But mine was a little more, grad level, sort of esoteric, a lot of reading, whereas he's making stuff with all his students.
The reality of which, yeah.
And I'm like, your readings tonight are, but it was such a great experience. And, the students were on board to learn about the history of housing across the world, and they taught me a lot for sure. And then the culmination of the time we spent in India was when we took 30 or 40 of our third year undergrad students down to Mumbai and sort of brought them through these informal housing settlements, these so-called slum developments where millions of people live in this self-built housing and they're always at risk of demolition and at risk of fires and just all the things that come with potentially unsafe housing. Mm-hmm. And we were really welcomed into these communities. We were there with all our students who were helping us translate when that was necessary, and just performed demographic surveys, formal surveys, like how do, you walk down these narrow hallways between buildings and then the buildings come together above you. So you're almost in these caves of plywood and plastic wrap and whatever people could grab to sort of build things. And just looked at it from all these different layers to, right, what's the population, what's the access to plumbing and restrooms. It was wild. And it was a really informative couple of weeks. And that's kind of the tone we left behind. We culminated all of that together, and the students were able to show it at their university and put it on display. And I think they were really proud of that. A lot of these kids have never, they're 20. They'd never seen communities like this. They'd heard about them, but...
Do you still keep in touch with any of the students?
Some of them, mostly the faculty.
Yeah.
But of course, they're all on Facebook.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Have you seen any big strides to kind of get away from that informal housing and more towards planned development?
There's another way of looking at it, right? Which is, and what I've seen done really well in some communities is, it's done particularly well in the favelas in Brazil. The government will sort of legitimize these developments, and instead of tearing them down and saying, no, you'll do public housing the way we tell you to do public housing, they'll say, look, these things are built and people are living in them, and there are communities here that are thriving on some level. So how can we go back and put in infrastructure, right? And if you think about it, it allows them to even leapfrog over a certain kind. You don't have to put in telephone lines anymore. Everyone's got a cell phone. So, electrical lines are overhead. Really the big one is plumbing, right? Yeah. Getting plumbing in. So in the favelas, what you'll see is they will do really kind of surgical demolition so that they can go back and put in safer stairways because these things are built on hills. Mm-hmm. So they'll use that to provide adequate, safe passage through the favelas, and also that becomes a plumbing main. right? And so everybody can kind of tie in, and then it all goes where it's supposed to, which is downhill. So in Brazil, it was done really well. And I was seeing a little bit of that in some of the places we saw in India. But that was my academic pursuits.
Yeah.
And then we moved back here and, to be honest, like got pregnant and got jobs and started businesses.
Yeah.
I don't know where it is. I'll leave that up to
life
younger, more creative people than me.
Well, so now we're back here in Austin. Just to pivot a little, but tell us. We've kind of got your history, a little bit, but maybe go into more of how did you what got you into the field of architecture, and what is it that you do now here in Austin for Chioco?
Yeah, I love talking about my path to architecture because it was very non-linear. And I feel like maybe you guys have similar sort of meandering paths. I work with people. No, yours is very yeah. There's a lot of one line.
Yeah.
Right? Is that similar? Like sounds familiar? You knew what you were gonna do.
I actually wanted to go into architecture. I felt like I had this draw towards design, but I didn't want to be in an office all day.
Yeah.
And that was kind of my view of architecture at the time, was like, well, you're just going to be in an office. Whether that's true or not, but that was my view of it. And so I got reading about the different architecture the different programs at A&M, and I kind of stumbled upon construction science, which is what I eventually got my degree in. And so that was more my path, but yeah. Sorry, I don't want to interrupt you.
No, it's really interesting to hear, and I think a lot of like people who have architecture in their sights, they see one part of it that doesn't click for them. I hear all the time like, I didn't want to be in an office all day, or I wasn't good at math. That's my favorite.
Yeah.
And probably the most common.
Baby, the computer does it for you.
Yeah, I'm like, let me tell you how much math I've done this year. Most of it was with my daughter on her homework.
Yeah, we're just now getting to the beginning of that.
Yeah, and I think it speaks to a very understandable but common misconception about this profession, and probably any profession, right? Like, I did not know how wide architecture was as a field, and I wish maybe some of those different paths had been laid before me at a certain point, and I hope that we're representing that a little bit more to sort of younger people. It's also a pipeline issue, right? I mean, this profession is notoriously underrepresented. Actually, there's a ton of females now, especially compared to like a couple of decades ago, but we still struggle with representation in minorities, and in like immigrant populations. So if we were able, I think, to provide these different avenues, like, yes, you can go through architecture, you can funnel into an architecture program and get to the end, but then on the other end, it funnels back out and there's all these different avenues. I think people would see something for themselves a little bit easier than maybe just thinking like, oh, I'm an architect and I'm gonna wear a hard hat every once in a while and I'm gonna point up while I'm holding a roll of plans. Is that everyone's seen that photo?
Yeah, right.
You like Google image
the stereotypical. Yeah.
So I think we're always interested, especially like you mentioned AIA Austin. There's so many wonderful volunteers doing fantastic work, whether it's through committees or board work, trying to provide these access points for different kinds of people, because it can only make the profession richer. So selfishly, we should all want it, but then outwardly, like, oh my God, why aren't more, minority architects being represented? And people are seeing it now, and they see that architecture can mean 1 million different things. It doesn't have to look the same. And I love that about a profession, any profession, but definitely architecture. It's a lot of fun. I mean, I met my husband in architecture school. Mm-hmm. He doesn't look a lot like an architect, He's having way more fun building things all day, and yet he knows how to think like an architect. It's a tool in his toolkit.
So like you bounce around, right? I didn't find architecture. I like to make. And so I started music. I was like, I'm gonna do music, and then I failed miserably in music, and it was like, shit, I got to go back to school. And then I went back to school, and I picked architecture, and I'm lucky I fell in love with it. And then but now I do architecture and I'm like, well, I want to paint. No, it's like I want to play music. No, I want to. And so like you talk about a linear process is like what everybody wants, and that's ideal. But then there's life, and there's people, and there's experience, and you don't do it that way. And so you kind of you find your way into that. And so, yeah, and I find that that's also the build process is not a linear process, and everybody wants to sign up and check the boxes from SD to DD to CD, and it doesn't like happen as what it is. And so, in some ways, like my professional aspirations, or what I do for work, is reflected in the way that the process of what building goes. And so there's that, and then there's also. I think that we have to push for kids to have exposure to STEM in design, everything. Like kids need to have more, school needs to be more about exposing kids to things that they can like and they can fall in love with, and then that can be their career, not let's chase, what their friends think is popular. And I think that, like, especially with, I don't delineate it, but like 9 to 12-year-old, like kids, like foster that that idea that you can be anything and here's everything that you can have. And I think that laying it out for kids to be able to have that and know what it means is important. And I agree. Over the past couple of decades, it's been an evolution in the way that things have been, but I think we could still do better.
Oh man, yeah, absolutely, right? And I feel like even you as a practitioner now, you see things through the lens of who you are as a painter and who you are as a musician. Like it's part of your making. Yeah, it's part of the lens through which you see the world and the stuff that makes you up as a profession. Like that's what makes it interesting, is that you have this whole framework within you where no one's going to see things as uniquely as you do because you have done art on this very intense level and made music. So hell yeah, like it takes all those things, and it the more backgrounds we can get people into the profession from, the more we can sort of like widen the net of how to feed the right kinds of really interesting, fascinating, creative, not typical people into this world that we're trying to build. Like all the better. And
I agree, and I think the construction side of things is very much that way, and it's thank you. It's definitely benefited from having a wide range of viewpoints, like you said, getting people from a lot of different backgrounds. And Adrian can probably speak to this as well, but pulling people from like different industries and like different professions, they tend to kind of see things in a different way, and it's refreshing sometimes too. When you work with people who, some are carpenters, some are masons, and then other guys are, they didn't start off in the construction industry, but now here they are, so getting all these different viewpoints just kind of helps get you out of your comfort zone, and maybe sometimes you get stuck, every now and then you come into a problem and you get stuck because you're used to seeing it, in one way. And so having diversity of thought and having people come in that just view things in a different way kind of helps everything to progress smoothly, and you problem solve better, and it helps you to learn and grow. And so I think that's one of the great things about the construction side of things.
Oh, for sure. It'll be the Renaissance that you're talking about, Mark, that'll kick off. It'll be people that are from wildly different backgrounds and ethoses that are kicking off something wild that we never could have
just grow together. Grow to And why not that way? That's the perfect way. Is that it's the what good is one wind chime all alone? It's the sounds our collisions make. It's all of us together making this new thing. Yeah, I think that's where it's found.
Yeah, and it'll take work and discomfort, right, to be able to open up avenues to people that don't look like me and don't come from what I come from. And
where's the discomfort in that?
There's always discomfort because you have to accept your privilege and you have to recognize it.
Okay,
and then you have to look. You have to look beyond what's been put in front of you as an obstacle, and understand that like those obstacles are far greater for other people. So that's the kind of discomfort I'm talking about, is like being like, oh, so much was given to me. So much was laid in front of me.
Yeah.
And I see the obstacles, like as a female in the profession, for example, I can immediately recognize the obstacles that are put in front of me, but they pale in comparison to other people's obstacles, right? That's good. It's good that we're all like in this kind of place where we're kind of questioning how much we've really opened the doors for other people, and where we've, maybe accidentally been like, close the gate behind me. Licensure is something with architects that we talk about all the time.
Well, they stopped the rolling clock. That was a big thing for people that have challenges in their life, and they missed the clock, and so it chops off the last 2 tests that they took, and then they're just in this vicious cycle trying to be a mother of 3 or a father of 3 and try to be able to make life happen, or the death of a spouse, or I think that if it requires attentiveness and attention to that people are people and life happens. And really happy for the chapter for doing that.
It was a great move by NCARB, like the National Licensure Board. It's been I think I read today it's been adopted by the Texas boards, or local. So now the stop clock, you have 5 years from your first exam pass to your last exam pass in architecture, because there's a lot of exams. There used to be like 9 or 13. I think I took 7. Now there's 5. But it's hard for some people to, and so if you don't make that shot clock, you lose the passes that you have. They start falling off the back end, and so now that's been opened back up, is what Mark's talking about.
I see.
And it's handy. I think we're going to see a lot of like new professionals in the next year or 2 who thought like, I can't keep chasing this, life gets in the way. Or in Texas, some people have like wildly successful firms and never got licensed because they were too busy like feeding this beautiful design firm and can't like make the time to become architects. So hopefully we'll see more people getting brought in. Not that licensure is the only path, but for me, I've found that like licensure has been immensely validating, especially for someone that has a very non-linear path to this profession. The day I got licensed, I was like, this is it. I don't have to call myself an architectural intern anymore. I don't have to call myself someone that works in architecture. I'm a freaking architect. Like, no one's going to take that from me. I will take it with me everywhere I go. But it's no small thing. I took all of my exams in the first year that my child was born, which, like, thinking back on that,
Wow.
I had an amazing partner. You guys have met him. He's cool, and it was super helpful to have that. But, like, I was like, I got to start, and then I can't stop. But everybody has that something, it's like everybody has that thing that comes up accidentally, like unexpectedly, and, we're all just out here living our lives. So, but to get back to your original question.
No, this is great. Keep going.
I can talk for forever.
Yeah.
But I have a nonlinear path in that I have a philosophy degree. That's my undergrad degree.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what my dad said too. He was like, all right, well, I told you to go to college and you showed me. And what do you do with a philosophy degree? You do something else. But it taught me how to like think critically and write and really engage. And then the whole time I was doing that, I was also like bartending and waiting tables, which taught me another aspect of who I am as a person, right? Liking to engage and dealing with people and relationships and getting like slammed on deadlines and teamwork and all of those things that service industry can teach you in a way that I don't think any other profession can.
Everybody should work in the service industry at some point in time in their career to get that perspective.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
And so, bartending, I used to joke that I think I've bartended for longer than I've been an architect. I think they're starting to even out now, like a little bit. But I started in Louisiana. You could start bartending at 18. I couldn't buy it.
Right.
Yeah.
But I was bartending.
You can serve it.
But so that kept me going through undergrad, and then I went back to grad school for an MArch program, which was at the time it was a 3.5-year program, a master's in architecture. And I know a lot of people that do this where they come from a non-architectural background and then they switch, which I think is one of those things. It's like you bring whatever you did before, you get to bring that to your MArch. And it made for a really interesting group of people in my studio. Like, one of them had a construction science background, and one of them had just a fine arts background. He was an amazing artist. Like, it was a real mixed bunch, and I appreciated that. Like, we all had our strengths. And then I graduated. I met my husband there. We were not, like, we dated for a while. I graduated a year before he did. It's funny, we talk about this. I graduated in the summer of 2008, and he graduated in the summer of 2009. Very different vibes at those two graduations, right? Do you guys remember what happened? At my graduation, everyone was like, woo, go out and get your architecture job. You get an architecture job. Everybody gets an architecture job. And at his graduation, they were actually handing out books called like A Road Diverged or something. I can't remember. He probably still has this book. But the whole theme of the graduation was like, you could do anything. Because there were no jobs in our profession. Like, nothing was out there. And so I had gotten laid off like right before. I think by the time 2008 was over, I had been laid off fully along with everyone I knew. Just hanging out in Baton Rouge, trying to figure out what the next step was going to be. And so I was bartending, which was great because I was making more money than I was as an architectural intern. I was like, I'll just go back to bartending for a little while. But the whole reason I went into architecture in the first place, it wasn't well thought out. Like, even in my early 20s, I didn't have a plan. My stepdad owns a home design business in Louisiana, and he does semi-custom homes and a lot of them, like, he'll sell home plans. At the time, it was like $450 for a set of plans. And I grew up running off blueprints on our old blueprint machine in the attic. So the smell of ammonia gets me like triggered because that was, you had your bottle of ammonia, and I ran off blueprints. That was how I charged him $5 a set. And he thought that was outrageous, but I was like, I'm in the 100-degree attic smelling ammonia. It's $5 a set. But these were small starter homes, and so they were we had a plot plan. We picked out a home, we put it on there, and you kind of ran with it. It's, similar to what you were talking about, Adrian. It's like just a different way of, not everybody can hire an architect. And so I really admired what he does and did. And I was going to go to architecture school for 1 year, learn CAD, drop out, and go take over and help him with his business. And during the course of grad school, I was like, oh, this is art, right? Like, this is so much more than what I thought it was going to be. And I can't, I explained it to my stepdad and my family, like, this is, I think I have something here. Like, I think I've stumbled into something that's really interesting to me. So yeah, that business is doing just fine without me. It never needed me. But when I went back to grad school during the recession, I was into the architectural history side. So I went back for architectural history. We moved to Austin so I could go to UT. I'd never really lived anywhere but Baton Rouge too, so like, it's so silly, but it was a huge move in my mind. I was like, how will we ever live in another capital city that's a college town that's immediately adjacent to where I grew up? Something so intimidating about it. But yeah, I had Christian with me, and we moved together, and UT was such a great program. I spent 2 years in the architectural history program, really dug in. That's where I wrote about informal settlements and worked with some great professors and academics. And I thought, well, I'll be an academic. This is it for me. Like, I'm gonna be the person that talks and writes about architecture all the time. And that would have been real cool. But I think once Drophouse started, we moved to India, we came back, still the market was soft, right? Like, not a lot of jobs. And once Christian had started Drophouse with his now partner, Matt, And I mean, I helped out. They like to say I helped out a little bit, but really it was them, right? Like they were doing,
Well,
Christian
the way he
arts
told us
tirelessly.
is that you told him to believe in himself, and he did. And then
Yeah.
he went and he ran, and it was because you believed in him,
You
he
were-
believed in himself, and now
You were
we're
his
the benefactors of
his
this
foundation.
wonderful company. Like,
He's so sweet. Probably how that went is I was like, you need to stop bartending and focus on what you're supposed to be doing. Because it was a little like shit or get off the pot, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you hedge your bets because like it was no joke, we had a baby, like I was just getting back into the profession. I just wanted him to know that it was okay to like go all in and fail. And that would be fine. But you had to fail knowing that you had like burned the ship at the harbor, right? Like this was, you had given it your all, everything. And yeah, so, but the other thing that Drophouse did was it anchored us here in Austin. And when you're in academics, you can't really be anchored, really,
Yeah.
not in the beginning, right? It's like, you're going to go wherever the hell the professorship is, wherever there's a job. And so, I got back into the profession. I started interviewing again and hopped around to a couple of firms for a couple of years until I found some good ones that I got a ton out of. Worked through licensure, that emboldened me to go after the kinds of, like, I think helped me hone down who I was as an architect. And you asked about Leadership Collective, and I think I want to talk to you guys about AIA Austin all the time because it's such a cool organization, and I think just really enables AIA Austin to do so much of the good work that it does in this town. But I was accepted into the first Leadership Collective class at a certain point. This must have been 6 years ago or something. And Leadership Collective is an AIA Austin program that allows you to, I mean, it's a year long, and it's just like hey, you're at a midpoint in your career. No one's checking in, and you probably don't have a mentor. You probably don't have a real path for what this is going to look like. This is the program for you. And it was like just such an eye-opening experience. You take personality tests, you take equity, diversity, and inclusion training, and you sort of learn who you want to be and where you want to go next. And that was my first AIA experience, and it was awesome. It really was. I met so many cool people. Anyway, I'm jumping ahead of your questions.
No, you're totally fine. Yeah, before we get into AIA, what it is and what AIA does, tell us about, kind of give us your day-to-day. You're at Chioco. I don't know if you want to talk about, or if you can talk about current projects that you have going on. Give us your day-to-day. What are you doing?
Yeah, I have been at Chioco Design a little over 5 years, and Jamie Chioco is the founding principal of the firm. Since I've been there, we've grown from 6 to I think we're at like 14 people right now. And we're a just boutique design firm. We cut our teeth on hospitality projects, food and beverage, which is my all-time favorite kind of project, right? Designing a restaurant is like a joy to me because I get it, right? I've seen all of them.
Yeah.
It's
well, you had so much experience in that side of the, in that industry. It's like now you get to be on the opposite side where you're designing the space, and yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, and I have just, as I'm sure you do with your clients, like just, especially with restaurateurs, a really deep admiration for what it takes to pull off a really popular food and beverage concept, right?
Yeah.
I mean, these people are geniuses at what they do. Those are small margins, and that is a tricky workforce, and you're dealing with the general public all the time. God bless them.
Yeah.
So I love restaurant owners. Just in my core, I think they're fascinating people, and so when the fact that I can like deal with them all the time and help them navigate something that's really, they're about to spend the most money they've ever spent on whatever this is, whether it's a ground up or a finish out, and they don't know that this isn't what they do, right? Like there are 100 potential bad decisions in front of them, and so to be able to like be trusted with shepherding them through that process, and it's not enough to shepherd them, it's our job to curate that process, right? And like make sure that they know what their next 5 steps are going to look like, and that they're confident in every decision that you're making on their behalf, and that you're empowering them to make the right decisions as well. Like restaurant projects all day. If I could do one kind of project for the rest of my life. Anyway, so we do a lot of restaurant projects, and those are probably the most like visible because everybody goes to restaurants and bars. But we do, at Chioco Design, we do a lot of office finish out. We do custom residential as well. I can't believe we haven't worked on a project yet. Let's fix that. And ground up construction as well, renovations. We are getting more. We have a number of upcoming boutique hotel projects. That's my little like insider. I am so excited because I think it's just a culmination of all the things we do exceptionally well, is like boutique, high level sort of hospitality concepts. And so my day-to-day looks a lot less like architecting than it used to. I used to be like, the project manager and have oversight, full control on my projects along with, Jamie or whomever I was working under. And now it looks a lot like firm management, right? Like kind of growing and managing the firm. And that comes with like business development and client relationships, which going back to like, a service industry background is just a sweet spot for me. I really enjoy that. I think my favorite thing about architecture has always been the people and the relationships that you get to make, which is why I love a big messy project where there's like 300 consultants and there's so many experts at the table. So yeah, day to day is the firm is pretty egoless. We sit down and we come up with good ideas, and those ideas are executed. There's not a singular source for those good ideas. We are super open. Who's done this? Who has this knowledge base? Who can I tap for the best decision for this project, right? We're always reaching out to each other. So it's a very collaborative firm. I've worked in...
Yes.
I agree. I've worked in firms where it was very head down, right? And very, these are my projects. And everyone has their projects, but I'm lucky enough to be in a space that has been really protected from that, I think. We are a firm of like pretty egoless people who are just looking out for the best path forward.
Yeah.
And we have a no mean people policy. So that's worked out pretty well.
Yeah, that's definitely, I think we have a similar strategy on the build side of things where you work with a team, and like I was alluding to earlier, everybody has, there's this wide array of backgrounds. And so you can draw from people's knowledge and, areas that you're weak in, somebody else is probably really strong in, and where they lack, maybe you excel in. And so it just, as a whole, it just helps, really push the project forward and hit all of those critical points, budget, schedule, details, quality, everything, and so... Yeah, that's awesome to hear you talk about that. I mean, that's on the design side, but on the build side of things too, it definitely helps with the overall quality of the build, and the happiness of the client at the end as well. I think it definitely kind of all ties together.
Yeah, I mean, gone are the days of like one decision maker who passes it down
the IDM.
Yeah. Who passes it down to middle management, and then it gets dispersed. Like it's archaic and it's patriarchal, and nobody's interested in that anymore. And I think we bring in enormous talent because there's like sort of an understanding that that's not. Hopefully we don't do that, right? The goal is to never do that. There's always some good ideas coming from anywhere, and so I can teach somebody something, but I can't get in the way of the good idea. Like that would be silly. It puts us as leaders more in the model of like guidance and less in the like handing down of, the passing down of information, which is fun.
So let's dive in now to AIA. So maybe for people who are listening who don't understand or know what AIA means or what it even stands for, could you kind of give us the breakdown? What is the AIA? What does it do? And how is it
Fully.
Fully.
In detail.
Yes.
Don't miss anything.
AIA National is going to love having me as the spokesperson. Let me see what I can do. It's the American Institute of Architects. It's not the only, but the largest sort of professional organization. You do not have to join it to be a licensed architect. That happens separately. But it is the largest kind of organization. We have a local chapter here in Austin, AIA Austin. And there are, like I said, other organizations. NOMA, the National Organization for Minority Architects, is another professional organization that exists kind of alongside and hand in hand. Sometimes tense relationships, but I think ultimately very helpful relationships with AIA Austin. So there are other organizations. AIA Austin's the big one. I came from Louisiana, the Baton Rouge chapter of AIA, and this was a long time ago, but I went to one or two meetings and I was like, this isn't my scene. I don't really think I have a place here. And when we moved to Austin, I just assumed it was going to be the same. I'm not interested in the AIA. Thank you. I'm not much of a joiner. So thank you, but no thank you. And what the AIA Austin has done that is, I think, very unique to the local chapter is, from my perspective, done a great job of creating and fostering an environment where architects can celebrate each other and themselves, can engage with the community and become even like citizen architects who are involved in advocacy levels at a municipal, state, or national level, can impact change with community organizations. And I think AIA Austin strives constantly to be more of a representation of female and minorities than the profession as a whole, or even the community as a whole, right? You see, like, our numbers need to be in excess of what's available to us, right? Because this is where the good ideas will come from. This is who needs to be pushed out in front. And so that's maybe not the official AIA Austin explanation, but that's why I love AIA Austin, and I think a lot of people have found a really comfortable home there. I bump up across, very aged and learned architects who I love and admire and have heard of and read about over the years, and like kids, right? Like 20 people in their 20s who are just trying to get a foothold, and it's a safe, wonderful place. And there's like 20-something committees in AIA Austin.
I didn't know that.
There's 20-something committees. It's wild.
The one... List them all. What
yes. Pop quiz.
No, you said.
You're the president. You should know them by heart. Come on. Spit it out.
No, I couldn't possibly.
That's cool. Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah. So it's like, all right, you're an architect, but there's a way for you to engage too. And for me, it's always been like, yeah, I'm an architect, but I'm also a woman. So I wanted to be involved in Women in Architecture Committee, which is a dynamo committee, right? They are doing amazing work. And that was kind of my, starter kit into AIA Austin. And I think a lot of women, the same. Or you can be a Latino in architecture, and that can be your in. Or K through 12 is your jam, and you want to teach kids about architecture, and that's your in. See, I'm starting to list them. I got a couple.
3.
Couple more.
17 left.
And then I'll start. Some of the newer committees are, there is an LGBTQIA plus Alliance committee.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are finding access to their identity as an architect who also, is gay, like through a committee like that allows them to have a presence. And another new committee that we have is the Housing Advocacy Committee. This one is dynamic. It's because we're in a housing crisis, and AIA Austin should be at the table.
Yep.
When we meet monthly with the mayor's office, we need to come with pointed questions and the hard topics of conversation, and be able to be a resource to them when they want to test out new ideas for zoning and planning regulations. So, that's my sample kit. Those are just some highlights.
It's a good one.
But it's a great community, really. I started out with Leadership Collective. The next year I was chairing the Women in Architecture Committee. The next year I was on the board of AIA. And the next year I was treasurer, and now here we are, like, I'm president, and could not be more proud of the board and the relationships. Like, it's not just architects, it's a whole AEC community. And I'm exceptionally proud to represent them this year. It's also quite exhausting. So I'm like, we've got 5 months left, 4 months. All right, I can do this.
Did you already talk about the Leadership Collective? What is that? Can you kind of go into more detail about what that is, the Leadership Collective?
It's the Leadership Collective, I want to say, started in maybe 2017 or 2018. And it's one of the committees of AIA Austin, and they spend a year, they select, I think, 20 people every year to go through this, like, really curated course. You meet monthly, and I think there's leadership programs similar to that, like through maybe RICA or Leadership Austin. This one's specific to AIA Austin and the community, so it wasn't just architects, it was engineers, it was construction, like all kinds of different folks in the industry. But it's a checkpoint at someone that's sort of early to mid in their career and needs to kind of realign themselves. It provides mentorship, not just mentorship. One of my favorite differentiations that I heard when I was in Leadership Collective is it's not enough to be mentored, you have to be sponsored. Someone has to sign up for being your advocate, right? That's what everybody deserves, and you owe it to somebody else to do that for them, right? Like, step out, sing their praises. Like, it's not enough to bestow. This is that top-down thing. It's like, well, I have all this knowledge, and now you have all this knowledge, and go. Like, it's real training, but then it's also just sponsorship, right? You can find the people in your life that really stick out there for you, right? Like, put you out when names are needed, right? That was Leadership Collective. It was fantastic. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, it's a great program. It's still going on. You should apply.
Okay, maybe.
I keep telling Lonnie to go back to architecture school. I keep telling him, go do it, dude.
I
take a little pause, hit the pause motion, and
I don't know about that, buddy. That's. Oh, I don't even want to think about going back to school. School was not my forte. I'll say that. It took a lot of failures to kind of propel me and motivate me, enough to not want to go through that again. So I think I'm good.
Yeah,
I think it would be a labor of love. I think.
Yeah. You don't need school to be an architect. What are you talking about?
Well, actually.
Okay. Maybe to be licensed. I don't know.
Yeah.
But one of the cool things that AIA does that they do every year is the home tour.
You guys are like the sterling gold platinum sponsor of the Homes Tour. Thank you.
No, it's awesome. It's a fun event. So the AIA Home Tour, they host it every year. In October, end of October, something like that. But so there's houses that are chosen every year, and then you buy tickets, and then you can go and basically tour these houses. And all the architects are part of the AIA, right? Like, that's one of the requirements, is that these architects have to be part of the AIA. But I think we've gone the past several years. We usually get a group together and go, but it's always a blast. And it's interesting too. It's fun to see all the local builders who kind of get behind it and push it as well.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's also an opportunity to not just celebrate the architect, right? I think the Homes Tour does really well. Provides like a voice and representation for all of the people that were involved.
I agree. Builders get no love.
I know. We'll work on that. Yeah. I mean, it's so interesting because now on the board to be involved in these kinds of conversations where it's like, we need to do more. It's not enough to have like allied membership. But it's like, how do you make a professional organization that really celebrates everyone else that's not specifically in your profession? But it's such an easy thing to do. It's just like, let's widen it. So, but the Homes Tour, I mean, I'd be interested to hear y'all's opinion. I think for Drop House Design, for example, like they were able to, represent themselves in one of the houses where they'd built these steel and glass operables, and there's not really another avenue for subcontractors like that, or maybe GCs that I'm aware of. That's quite as fun as the homes tour, because like you are walking through these homes that are unbelievable, and seeing just the kind of like craft and artistry that it can't be like this in other cities. It just can't.
I don't think it is.
Right.
I really don't think it is.
There's so much freaking talent here.
Yeah.
It's unreal.
Yeah.
And I remember the first year I went to the homes tour, I was just like, do they do this like every 5 years? Like, how much did it take to collect this, like, that year must have been like 10 homes or something?
From the top down, like, there's really awesome design in Austin compared to 500 miles away from here. Like, I think it is the epicenter. Plus, you've got some of the best builders, and plus, you've got like some of the best clients.
I know.
Like, it is so packed, and it's like it's a
I'll
call it a trifecta. It's like there's so many things that make it where it can be that special year over year. I was so bummed COVID hits and it's all online. It's like, all right, whatever. I'll just watch it online. It was like, it wasn't the same thing.
It's not the same.
And I'm glad we're past those times. But to be able to have the opportunity to not only like walk through the best design, but like not like in your area, like this is something that is here. It's not, you're looking at an Instagram post and that's like, that's in New York or San Fran. It's like it's here. It's so important. And and the patrons, the people that allow their houses to be on those tours that's another level of like of giving, to be able to
absolutely
let a lot of people walk through their homes.
Yeah, you're right to call them patrons. They are giving so much of themselves to let people be inspired by the kinds of stuff that they get to experience every day.
But it's awesome that they recognize that too, that they're opening up their home because they realize that it does have this quality of design and construction. And to kind of go back to what you're saying, Austin is definitely a hub for great design, awesome builders, and then just immensely talented craftsmen. I mean, just you got to give it to these guys who, they're the boots on the ground, and they've had a lifetime of experience, a very interesting background just themselves, and whatever's led them up through life, and now they're there in that moment, they're working on that project, but that they've just had this lifetime of experience and knowledge and practice, really, and they've just mastered this craft, and it's humbling and it's inspiring to be able to work with some of these guys who really make it all come together.
You've talked about I don't know, that it's like a top down. That's not the way to go. Like, there's so many people in architecture in AIA. They talk about the IPD, the integrated project delivery, where it's not the architect, it's not the engineer, it's not the client, it's not the consultant. It's all of us, and it's also the people that have. I've worked with masons where they're passing down stuff that their great grandfather taught them how to be able to do this. And like, if we would have these people sitting in these conversations at the beginning of the day, to be able to have like where it's literally a collective of us being able to make the project, I think that's the way. It's more at the beginning. You have to be able to understand how the end is going to work, and you have to understand that it's a process to be able to get there, and that the people that are along the way, that are the gems of the space. And in AIA, you go and you look at 3 houses, and you're like, man, the masonry work is great in here. Well, that was all the same guy. That guy did all of those in several different ways. Like, we have to be more inclusive, and I think that like having that in practice, like I have this ideal thought of like having a rock house or having a steel house or having like it's all one thing. And I think that it's beautiful because it's pure, because it's all somebody's entire craft.
Like one craftsperson.
Yeah, exactly. Like I just have a rock house.
Yeah.
And it's like, where's the wood? Well, there's no wood. It's a rock house.
It's a rock house. Well, then what does the plumber do, though?
He talks to the rock guy, and then we figure it out together. But oftentimes it's top down, and it's like, well, here's my drawing, and it's it's not the Bible, people. Like what I'm saying is like what I'm showing is like it should be up for discussion, and
No, you're right, Mark. It's a beautiful idea, and one of the things I will probably struggle with or hope to refine my whole profession is like, what do I leave for the artisans in my drawings or in my concepting, and what do I toil over, right? Like, and where's that line, right? You mentioned craftspeople and designers, and it also takes a contractor who is willing to just buy into this and be as passionate as you are, because you guys are coming out on the tail end of 6 to 36 months of passion, and then y'all are getting asked to just buy into this and pick it up and take it all the way through, and there are times when it's like, I just need somebody cool to make something that does this. Do you have somebody cool that can make something that does this? But also, I need for this opening to be just like this, so that when the light comes in at this time of day, it hits this. And you poor guys have to like navigate all of that.
The perspective that the architect adds to that design, though, is critically important. So when you say for us to buy into it, it's not just reading the plan, it's seeing your vision. Because you just said a very important point, which is the light coming in this one window at this particular spot. That's not really in the plan somewhere. But it is part of the vision that when we collectively work together and we get on board and we see it and we get excited about it, and then we want to follow it through. Yeah. But it is a collaboration, and it's very difficult. Things do not default to perfection. Yeah. Right? Everything lends to diffusion. So all of us are trying to go against nature's desire.
Yeah, it's a beautiful art to do something that in the end winds up so perfect that it's invisible, because you guys saw it through and fought battles, and God knows what it took to get that actually where we needed it to go.
I like what you just said. It's invisible. And there's so many things in architecture where when it's done correctly, you almost don't notice it. Yeah. If it's done wrong, you notice it.
Then it's very noticeable.
And doing it so that it just looks calm and perfect. There's so much thought that goes into that, and I think a lot of people don't even see that thought.
That's so hard.
When you're in it and you're a part of it, you go, holy cow, there's so much thought that goes into the silly details.
Yeah, it's a beautiful lie. I think lighting is one of the things that I use to illustrate that exact point to people who aren't in the industry, who can click into it. Like, when you've walked into a space and you've been immediately comfortable and you're like, I will move into this restaurant, for example, I will live here now. It's because it's so well lit. That's it. It's because of 100 things, but the lighting is impeccable, right? Otherwise you couldn't get there. So you don't notice it, right? This is like good lighting 101 is you don't perceive of it. But bad lighting, you start paying attention to the lights and you start picking them apart, and you can see the light source. And so we have some sort of standard rules with lighting design in our office that we just kind of like throw out. And it's all so dumb and silly, but it's like, well, when people go out, they need to look good. And when they go to the bathroom and look in the mirror, they need to love what they see. And we have a responsibility. It's so easy to do lighting badly. But if you just pay attention to those little things, then, they're going to walk out of there with a wonderful experience. I mean, the food has to be great too, but...
Food helps. And the service.
That's important.
Rarely get good service out here.
Well, Christy, it was a pleasure to have you on. I enjoyed the talk. It was very informative. I appreciate your time. It's the end of the day. We're all tired, and I appreciate you coming on, taking the time to sit down and talk to us. So I really appreciate you.
You guys are a blast. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Christy.
Yeah.
We hope you enjoyed this discussion. For more information on upcoming episodes, follow us on Instagram. We want to hear from you, so leave us some feedback to help us shape future episodes.